So I'm here tonight. I want to touch on the sheep improvement scheme, and in particular the element of that in the genotyped ram task on the hillside, and what impact that's going to have on the sector over the next coming years. So just to touch on, Sheep Ireland and who we are. First of all, our primary aim is we exist to benefit our farmers, our agri-food industry, and our wider communities. And we're doing this through the developing and applying of science and technology to ensure that our farmers and industry are making the most profitable and sustainable decisions. So what's happening in the sheep improvement scheme now in terms of the ram task fits perfectly in alignment with this. So Sheep Ireland was set up just over 10 years ago now in 2009 with the aim of trying to increase the rate of profitability and sustainability in the sheep sector through breeding. And one of the main things that we need to do that is data. So the national sheep database was established, and we've been working tirelessly since then with breed societies and the rest of the industry to try and gather as much into the one database as possible. So you'll see on the right-hand side there all the flock books that are now hosted on the Sheep Ireland database. So that's pretty much all the lowland flock books are now hosted on there. We have 2 hill flock books currently at the moment, the Mayo Connemara and the Donegal Cheviot. Getting all these flock books on board took a lot of time and a lot of effort. We had to build up trust and relationship with all those societies in order to get them to host their flock books on our database and share the data for the genetic evaluations that happen every week. There has been a lot of benefits, though, for those flock books in the lowland in particular over that time as a result of joining. One of the big ones being is the ability to take full advantage of some of the research that's happening all over the country as well. So this just a couple of research projects that have happened over the last 5-10 years that have been directly linked to breeding. And this has been, a lot of genotyping has happened, a lot of records in terms of weights have been collected, or if we think of today, we're collecting lots and lots of records in terms of greenhouse gas emissions from sheep. At the minute, all that research and all that investment is primarily all getting funneled towards the lowland sector, and that's purely because they've got the infrastructure there to actually to harness that and make use of it. So we want to change that. It's not by design. We only have 2 hill flock books here at the moment. That's it's more of a function of the structure that was already in place. So as part of the sheep improvement scheme now on the hill thing, we want to see a few more hill groups up here now in the next number of years. That's part of the aim. And look, we have our industry partners here as well. So for example, we now have carcass data flowing in from ICM, Dawn, and KeyPack on a daily basis. Any animals that's going through there, their data is feeding into the database and linking up to any performance recorded animals that we have on there. So, how important is the hill sector to the sheep industry? And this is data based on the 2021 sheep census. And, don't need to tell you guys, but very important. So, this is the classifications. You'll all filled out your census. This is, I suppose, the results of that at the national level. So about 19% of all the breeding rams or stock rams recorded in the 21 census were put down as hill rams. The next couple of figures I want to take your attention to is these two. So 31% of the ewes nationally were recorded as hill ewes. A further 18% were recorded as hill cross, which is just shy of 50% of the national flock. So, it's not hard to make the jump that, these 19% of pure rams are breeding these 31% of ewes, and in one generation or 2 generations are getting to those 18% as well. So these 19% of rams are putting their DNA essentially in half the national flock. When we look to see, how many new hill rams are entering the national flock every year? How many new rams are coming into the system to replace animals that have died out of the system, essentially? It's about 4,000 new rams every year, which it's not a massive number when you think of the impact that they go on to have across the national flock. However, only 3% of the flocks on the database last year were hill flocks. So the hill industry is underrepresented there. And we'll talk about why that is. But that's something we as an industry, both lowland and hill, need to work on, because these 4,000 rams are having a massive impact on the national ewe flock. So this idea of hill flocks recording ancestry information or in time performance recording, it's not a new idea. This, we've had, and long before my time as well, there have been plenty of initiatives to try and get this up and going. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, they've been false starts. And, I suppose you haven't failed until you've stopped trying. And I suppose as long as you've taken lessons, I suppose, from previous endeavours. And I suppose we've tried to summarise 3 of the main things that have resulted in the previous initiatives, I suppose, maybe not lasting the term. So the first one is lack of market for the parentage recorded rams. So these breeders, they go out, they record their lambs in terms of, they say, right, this lamb, that's the mum, that's the dad, got the tag numbers in place, and send that data off. There's a bit of work on that in terms of your single sire mating, you're maybe tagging your lambs, you're putting that information into the computer. So there's a bit of work on that. And then when it came to the sale season, or at the end of the year to the sales, they weren't really seeing, right, well, I'm getting a bit of a bonus for these rams here because there's more information on them. So, after a year or two, they were starting to lose that passion, I suppose, for it. And look, you couldn't argue with them for that. They weren't getting that extra bonus for them, I suppose, because in order for that to really kick off, you need a majority, I suppose, to make the circle complete, I suppose I should say. Having only 1 or 2 flocks doing it, it's very difficult for those to get traction on their own. No short-term gains were seen. So again, they've done this recording for their flock. Maybe they've identified better ewes that have performed well, rams that have performed well or not so well. And after a year or two, they're still just not seeing a massive difference in the flock. And the reality is, you're probably not going to see a difference after 1 or 2 years. Breeding takes a lot of time, especially if you've brought a bad ram into the flock and he breeds daughters. Those daughters could be in the flock for the next 5, 6, 7 years. So it's when you're making changes to your breeding policy, especially on the maternal side, you need to be thinking long term. So they weren't seeing immediate gains in that behalf. So again, another reason why the enthusiasm for it may have dwindled. And the last one then was the practical difficulties around recording parentage on hill flocks. So of course, look, if you're recording parentage on a system where you're lambing outdoors, that is a lot more difficult compared to a lowland system where they're lambing indoors, ewes and lambs go into individual pens and so forth. So that was a big barrier as well. Now, we're hoping that we have greatly reduced the issues in those 3 key areas via the sheep improvement scheme and through genomics, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So in terms of the sheep improvement scheme, it's about, we now know there is a demand for parentage recorded rams, or rams that are DNA sire verified. So there will be a demand there. The short-term gains for the breeders, there will be in terms of a bit of a price bump, I suppose, for the rams that are eligible for the scheme, as well as they'll also be getting immediate results back, immediate genomic results back in terms of the sire verification, genomic inbreeding scrapie. And the practical difficulties then, again, genomics is helping to break down this hurdle because we can use genomics now to assign parentage. We can say this lamb is from this ram without the farmer having to identify that at birth. So a little bit about the scheme then. So started just this month. So got a €20 million budget, €12 per ewe. There was actually, as far as I'm aware, the last figures I had, there was actually 10% more ewes subscribed to the sheep improvement scheme than they had expected. So which shows there was really good uptake for the scheme, which is really good, because I think there was a little bit of anxiety, I suppose, about joining it, especially a couple of months before the deadline. But look, we seem to have gotten a lot of flocks in, which is great to see. Just given our location tonight, I thought just to maybe help with some of this in perspective, I was looking at the figures. We're going to need approximately 1,000 rams, hill rams eligible for the sheep improvement scheme between years 1 and 3. So, we are talking a reasonable number of animals here to go through it. And again, it's about building that momentum. So what is the task? So every farmer in the scheme must purchase a genomically tested ram in the first 3 years. For flocks with more than 150 ewes, they must do it twice over the 5 years. So once in the first 3 years, and then once in any year subsequent to that they've chosen. The ram must be scrapie type 1, 2, or 3. And then for lowland flocks, the ram must be 4 or 5 star on the replacement or terminal index. For hill flocks, the ram must be DNA sire verified, and by the hill rams, we're talking the Black-Faced Mountain, or I don't know where the rest of my Cheviot has gone there, or a Cheviot type animal. But for hill flocks, they actually have the widest range of options. They can choose the lowland type ram as well. So if you're designated as a hill flock, you can go out and get your 4 and 5 star Texel that'll meet the lowland requirement, or you can go out and get your Black-Faced Mountain ram that meets the requirement. So you have 2 options there. So what is genotyping? Look, I suppose the actual science behind it and all that, quite detailed, very complicated, but luckily we don't need to worry about that. That's all taken care of. In terms of the process of genotyping, that is very, very simple, thankfully. So we have our tigers here, and they apply this tissue tag to the ram, very similar to like what a BVD tag would be if any of you are using those in cattle. So you can see that here, the tag number of the ram is printed on the green tag, so the 2 numbers here correlate up. A tissue sample is collected and sent to the lab for analysis. Once they analyze the sample, that comes back to Sheep Ireland, and from that we can determine a lot of new information about that particular animal. So I'm going to show you a short video now. Of, I suppose, the process of genotyping an animal, just to, I suppose, highlight, how simple it is. So here, this is, someone opening the box with their DNA sampling kit included. So there you can see your green tag with the tag number of the ram printed on there. And there's some handy instructions included there. A couple of very easy steps to follow. And there's also a return addressed envelope included as well. So everything you need is there, and you can order tigers through this system as well if needs be. The tiger is then loaded up, very similar to you would do with your normal tags. And in terms of the placement, again, you're talking the same thing. You want good placement, restrain the animal, and put your tag in. Once the animal is tagged, the DNA is collected in that little vial towards the side of the tiger. Put that in the bag, put that into the return address envelope, and send that off to the lab. And as far as the breeder is then concerned, that's their job done pretty much. 4 weeks later, they'll get a notification of the results to say that this animal has now been, whatever it be, sire verified. This is their scrapie result. This is their genomic results. So, the actual process of getting them done, it's a 1-day job, largely, and a pretty easy one at that. So what can we get from that little tissue sample? The first thing, parentage verification and predictions. So, we don't actually need, we don't need breeders to tell us, this is the hog that I'm testing, and I think that's the daddy over there. As long as the animal that you're testing is genotyped and any of the potential sires that it could be are genomically tested, we'll work the sire out. We don't need any guidance. As long as the sire is genotyped as well, the system will figure that out. In terms of the scrapie resistance, you'll get your scrapie result, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. You'll get a genomic inbreeding coefficient, which tells you how genomically inbred the animal is itself. This is primarily more informative to the breeders because it helps them see a trend of inbreeding in their flock over time and can help them make maybe more informed decisions about what they want to do going forward. And then in time, genomic evaluations. So that's not something necessarily that's going to happen in the early years in the hill flocks, but it's something that can happen in time. That's happening, as on a routine basis now in the lowland, that we are giving more informed star ratings based on the DNA of animals because we have lots and lots of data to back that up. And there's much more coming that we can do with these genotype results as well. So, just when animals are genotyped today, if a new piece of research is done next year, 5 years down the line, that can be retrospectively applied as well. So scrapie then, so every animal, as I mentioned, every animal that's tested gets a scrapie result, and they go from types 1 to type 5. Animals that are type 1 are the most resistant to scrapie. Animals type 5 are the least resistant to scrapie, so they're the most likely ones to develop it. We can see here we have it split between the lowland and the hill animals. So the big difference really is around this section here. The hill animals, about 30% of them are in the type 3 area. So this is something I suppose we want to, over the course of the next 5-10 years, try and move more of that cohort of animals closer to our 1s and 2s. The reason we want to, I suppose, reduce the numbers of 4s and 5s out there primarily is to try and reduce the risk of a classical scrapie case outbreak in the country. Our last case was actually 2018, and if we can go 7 years without a case, we can get classed as scrapie-free status. But it only takes one case to set us back to year 1 again, and we have to wait another 7 years. So this is somewhat trying to build in an insurance policy to absolutely minimize the risk of that happening over the next 10, 20 years. Luckily, though, in terms of what's eligible for the scheme, is, as I said, 1, 2s, and 3s. So 19 out of 20 rams are still going to pass on the scrapie test as far as the scheme is concerned for the hill animals. So where will you find these rams that are eligible for the scheme? So the first place, sales catalogues. In terms of the lowland breeds, look, all those sales are now using our catalogues, and we will be working with all the hill breeding groups in terms of getting the information on the sheep improvement scheme rams that are eligible into those catalogues as well. The second one is on the ram search, a very, very useful tool. So you can use it in 2 ways. The first way is, you're going out and you're looking to purchase a new sire, and you go and you say, look, I'm looking for, a Kerry blackface ram in Kerry that's sheep improvement scheme eligible. That'll bring you back a list of all the sheep that meet that criteria, and you can see the breeder's details and so on. So it'll help you to find an animal. Or the second way you can use it is, you're in a farmer's yard or you're at a mart and you've selected your ram or 2 rams. You can type in their exact tag numbers into the ram search, and it'll bring you back their specific information. So you can use it either to generally find your rams or to verify the information on a ram that you're already looking at. This is a screenshot then. Once you're within the ram search, there's lots of information available in these, especially on your lowland type rams. So you can see the star ratings of the animal, so your placement in your terminal. You can see that the animal has a genomic evaluation and the scrapie type of the animal as well. We will be adding a flag to this website as well to make it even easier that that you can see very clearly which animals are sheep improvement scheme eligible or not. Very similar on the catalogues then. You can see your star ratings in those. The symbol on the top right is to tell you that the animal has a genomic evaluation, which is required for the scheme too. You can see the parentage information up there and the scrapie information as well. Yeah. And again, we'll be adding a flag there for sheep improvement scheme eligibility. So what will the scheme do for the hill breeds? Well, the first thing it's going to do is help lay the foundations to develop flock books. So I've mentioned earlier about how the lowland flock books have gained a lot in terms of being able to really access the research and be able to drive breed improvement within those breeds. This is the first step, I would say. We're not farming flock books today, but this is the first step in just building up ancestry information. It'll also help to increase the demand for those rams that are part of groups and breeding structures, and it'll also allow farmers to make more informed breeding decisions because there'll be more information coming with these rams now as well. What types of informed breeding decisions might that be? Well, first off, maybe to help from breed dilution. I know, certain farmers in certain areas of the country, they've maybe got a blackface type sheep that is accustomed to their area, and they're in a bind because they want to buy a sheep from their area because it's adapted to that area, but at the same time, they don't want to have an inbreeding issue by staying too close. So the flock book will help with that, so as it will allow people to go out and purchase new sires in the knowledge that it's not related to sires that they've bought previously. So gives you more options there, more informed options. The second one is a foundation for systematic breed improvement. So for example, with the Mayo Connemara's and the Cheviots that I mentioned earlier, one of the issues they brought to us that they had with sheep was in terms of the mouths. They wanted these sheep to last longer. They wanted because they said, and the reason they weren't lasting was that the mouths were breaking. So what we've done for the last couple of years now is we've went round to all those ewe flocks, recorded the mouths of all the ewes, between mating and lambing, and we're keeping track of which animals have broken mouths, overshot, undershot. The idea being that in time we'll have breeding values to be able to go out or to publish breeding values. So when you're going to the sale someday, you could see a ram, that is, 95% of his daughters will be fine, 99% of his daughters will be fine for the mouth, or expected lifetime expectancy of the full mouth, something to that degree. So basically, it'll mean you can breed for better mouths from the data that's collected. And look, the flock books are a great way to help promote the breed and to promote breed improvement. So what benefits have the lowland industry seen to date? So there was a study done by Abacus Bio in 2021, and so between 2014, when the breed improvement program really kicked off on the lowland side of things in 2020, they've worked out that it's added 17 million to the industry. We go a little bit further ahead then, and if we keep on the same trajectory over the next 20 years, we're looking at adding an additional 115 million to the industry. And that's before we consider, if we can get the hill sector up and going. If we can get the hill sector up and going as well, that figure is going to go up even more. So, there is a lot to be gained here as an industry, right from the breeder, farmer, and the whole way through the chain. Now, I know 115 million through the industry. What does that mean to me at farm gate level? So we went and we done that as well. So we done a study comparing animals that were ranked in the bottom 20% versus animals in the top 20%, or 1 star versus 5 stars, using commercial data. And again, this is lowland data because unfortunately, look, we just don't have enough hill data to do this yet. No reason to expect we wouldn't get similar results when we do though. So the first thing is flock performance. These 5-star animals performed better. As we would have hoped. So they're weaning more lambs, and they're also getting those lambs off to slaughter faster. So they're performing better. You follow that through then to economics. We worked, what is the difference in economics in the two flocks? 27 euros per ewe net profit per year versus 45 euros net profit per ewe per year. That's a 66% difference. Now, bear in mind, these are the extreme examples, comparing the very bottom flocks, essentially, to the very top flocks. But even, you half that down, that's still a big difference in profitability, purely coming from the difference in the genetics. And sustainability, we can't get away from this one. The 5-star flock producing 7% less carbon per kilo of carcass produced versus the 1-star flock. So again, genetics is a huge tool that we can use to improve performance, profitability, and sustainability. We're not saying that it's going to absolutely solve those problems, but it is going to push us nationally in the right direction. So for hill breeders, how can they get started? Well, the first thing is contacting Sheep Ireland and getting the flock set up, and you'll need to provide the basic information for your flock there. We'll also need the full tag numbers of all the rams you want to genotype, along with the birth year of that animal and the breed type or the strain of that animal. And it's very easy to submit that information. You go to the Sheep Ireland website, sheep.ie, and there's a big banner there at the top. You click there and you put that information in, and that's you started in the process. Or I have some forms here with me tonight. I have a banner down the back there. Feel free to call down afterwards and I can hand those out. Once you've got the flock set up and we've got the animals' details, we'll get the kits ordered. That box will arrive in the post for you, like we've seen in the video earlier, and it's very simple then to get that that DNA collected and sent off. So my take-homes then. So for because we get lots of questions in this, the rams for the scheme must be purchased on the year you selected. So if you bought a ram last year in 2022, and you've selected 2023 as the year to do the ram task, that ram isn't going to suffice for you. He must be purchased in the year that's been selected. The ram search and the sales catalogues will make it easy to find these animals when we're looking for them. And for hill ram breeders, if you take nothing else from what I've said tonight, get your stock rams genotyped as soon as possible. So for breeders that are part of groups, they can get their stock rams genotyped for free. So even anybody that's unsure about whether they're going to go down this road or not, there's absolutely nothing to be lost by going ahead, getting your stock rams done now. If you have a stock ram there now and you go home tonight and he's dead and he hasn't been tested, then none of his progeny can be eligible for the scheme. So he might have progeny that, you might have hoggets coming through now for next year. And if you haven't got that sire done, his hoggets won't be eligible, and his ram lambs this year won't be eligible. So get the stock rams done as soon as possible. And this is a huge opportunity now for the hill sector. Like, this is the first time the hill sector has had a proper shot at a breeding objective as part of a national program. And we, and I say we as in the royal we there, us all as an industry need to do everything we can to make sure that this is a success. Because if this doesn't come off, for whatever, we can't make this into a long-term project, who knows how long it'll be before we get a chance to do something around this again. And if we can establish or lay the foundations to establish some flock books at the end of this, this is going to have an impact in the industry for years to come, long beyond the end of the sheep improvement scheme. So it's something that we just need to go at hammer and tongs. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Very detailed presentation. Michael, I'll go to you first, maybe if you have any questions there from Slido.
Yeah, good few questions there. So look at I suppose a clarification on the scrapie test. What happens if the results show scrapie from a tissue sample? So I suppose the question is, if a farmer took his tissue sample, is it possible that sheep would actually show up with scrapie?
Oh, the actual.
Yeah.
No,
well, okay.
No. So we won't detect that.
Second question then, I suppose, and I think you probably covered that, is can you use a ram bred on your own farm? So if you're a pedigree breeder and you have rams that are suitable and genotyped, or if you're a hill sheep breeder and you genotype hill rams, can you use them on your own farm to tick the box for the scheme?
Unfortunately not, no. It's back to the ram must be purchased to be eligible, because there has to be a cost for going.
And the last one that I'll ask very quickly is, when you genotype a rams, must you register them on some sort of a system, and is there a cost associated with that? So somebody who's genotyping rams for the scheme, or somebody who's maybe buying a ram for a scheme, is there some need for them then to register that ram on a system?
So in terms then of how to, there's no verification process. So, once you purchase a ram, you don't have to inform Sheep Ireland or inform the department. You write that into your action book, that this is the ram you bought, this is the star rating he was, or this is the results that he had on the day that I purchased him. So there's no, central verification for that process. It's still just use your action book, so it's similar to all your other tasks.
Okay, and one more quick one.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. What are the costs involved with the sheep improvement scheme, genotyping, etc., and with Sheep Ireland?
Yeah. So for hill flocks, it is free to join Sheep Ireland. We have also just recently made it free to genotype stock rams if you're a member of a group. And then to genotype, say, your ram lambs, your hoggets that you're going to sell at the end of the year, they're costing €15 per sample, so it should be €24.60. And for members of groups, we're subsidising that down to €15. So in order to get, if you've got 10 hoggets there at home that you have for sale at the end of the year, €150, we get those tested. And, you would have, fingers crossed, the 10 of those would then become eligible unless they fail on scrapie or we can't find the sire.
Okay, we'll take one question over here. I think we've one down the back afterwards.
Yeah, it's just a question in relation to the rams. Are you not afraid of the gene pool narrowing? It's already becoming a problem with the hill sheep in certain places. Now, the two main sales around here would be Milltown and Dingle. If you go into those sales, take up the catalogue, you can see one or two names could be covering 15 to 20% of the rams. And I already know some of those people aren't going into it. Like, so the gene pool is definitely narrowing. You just said already that lads who were recordium maybe before, they were getting no bonus on the rams. The reason they were getting no bonus because they weren't suitable. So by pushing people into this scheme, you just said you need maybe 1,000 rams in Carton Kerry. So you're going to create a false market for rams that possibly aren't good enough, but just because they're eligible for the scheme, it's going to cause a problem that way.
So, so there's a couple of parts to that question. You might need to remind me of the first part of those again. But in terms of these rams not being good enough, there's no reason that the quality of rams that people are buying for the scheme should be any different. The best quality rams out there can get genotyped and can get verified. I'd be saying to you, if those breeders are saying they're not doing it, go back and push why are they not doing it? It's going to cost them very, very little as breeders to get done, and they're servicing their customers. And ideally, the whole point of this is to try and them to attract new customers as well. So to me, it just doesn't make any sense for someone that's selling any number of rams not to be doing this. The first part, the gene pool. If anything, I think this should help to manage the gene pool, because at the minute nobody knows what's happening. There is no information. It's a case of I'm managing my inbreeding by buying from somebody different every year, but I don't know that. I bought a ram off this person last year, and I'm going to buy off someone different next year. But what I don't know is they bought a ram off. So it's at the minute we don't know. Whereas if we had the information, you could make an informed decision to say, right, well, I've used that bloodline now. I'm going to avoid that for a number of years, and I can use the data coming out of the scheme to make sure I avoid it. Thanks.
Okay. We have a question over here.
Assuming I buy my ram for year 1, and having finished with him, I offer him back in the mart. What is to protect somebody else from buying him? I believe he will not be eligible for another person.
He will. A ram can be eligible more than once over the lifetime of the scheme.
Is that absolutely certain?
Absolutely certain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can offer my ram for sale, and somebody else can.
You could buy your ram, use them for a year, and sell them on next year, and someone else could use them for their scheme requirements the following year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Another question over here.
David, with the genotype rams, the hill rams, if I purchase one this year, he's genotyped. Now he'll do me for the 3 years. Now I go to Dingle Mart, say in 3 years' time, and I'll buy a nice ram that I like that's genotyped as well. Now with your app on the phone, will I be able to check, is the new ram related to the existing ram I have at home? Will that be part of the Sheep Ireland's app?
So we're building that at the moment, and where I would envisage that being placed is on the ram search, so that you would go in and you could say, how related is that tag number to that tag number, pretty much, and to come back and say, and it'll come back kind of in a traffic light system, green being, bring him into the flock, orange being, if you really like him,
Yeah.
red being, avoid.
Okay, and I suppose another thing there as well, like the Dingle Scotch Society, they're going back about 10 years ago. When we DNA tested those rams, it actually came back that 33% of those rams were very closely related. So I think it would be a good idea to get those. It's foolish not to do it, because you're bringing in inbreeding and all the associated effects that has on your flock going forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'll take one last question if there's anything left on the floor. No? Okay. Look, we'll wrap it up there. Look, it was a very interesting night, so look, it's just a round of applause there for Kevin. Just to do.